All right, welcome to Unit 1 for the We the People National Invitational. My name is Christine Hull, and I will be your facilitator today. We are with Faith Lutheran Middle School from Las Vegas, Nevada. And in just a moment, I will have the judges introduce themselves, followed by each of the students, and then we will begin the hearing. Students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge questions. My microphone will be muted during the hearing, and I will be holding up 1 minute and time signs. I suggest that you use gallery view rather than speaker view, although all of our students are on one screen. At the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback to the teams, and then we will conclude. Judges, the floor is yours.
Good morning and welcome. Look forward to seeing or hearing your presentation today. My name is Glyptis Ann Grider-Jones. I'm with the University of Louisville's McConnell Center, and the fellow judges are
Tim Moore from the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
And I'm still Alan Broadman, the high school teacher from, or recently retired high school teacher from East Brunswick, New Jersey. Looking forward to hear what you guys have to say.
and if you can introduce yourselves too, please.
Hi, my name is Isabel Alabi, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School.
Hi, my name is Sienna Lopez, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School.
Hi, I'm Isabella Franzi, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School.
Hi, I'm Gracie O'Shaughnessy. I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School. We're here with our teacher, Mrs. Carroll, and our principal, Mrs. Harper. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us today.
All right, well, we'll just jump right in. As you may know, it's Unit 1, question number 2. I'll read the question and then you may begin. If man in the state of nature be so free as has been said, if he be absolute lord of his own person and possessions, equal to the greatest and subject to nobody, why will he part with his freedom? Why will he subject himself to the dominion and control of any other power? How did John Locke answer these questions? According to John Locke and Thomas Jefferson, what is natural law in a state of nature? Do you agree or disagree with their reasoning? Why or why not? What did Locke mean by the social contract? Why did he think it was necessary? What obligations does the social contract place on government and on the individual? You may begin.
Every human is born with the natural right to life, liberty, and property. These rights in itself are sufficient enough in a state of nature, but in a society, these rights are limited. On the surface level, it seems absurd for anyone to join a society if this is the case, but John Locke argues a society provides security and a certain degree of safety that a state of nature cannot ensure. In a state of nature, he believes the strong would prey upon the weak, and the weak would be forced to join the strong. In America, the 8th Amendment demonstrates its ability to protect its citizens from cruel and unusual punishment that the strong would inflict upon the weak in a state of nature.
As proven by John Locke, man will part with individual freedoms by a means of protection he could not give himself, the protection of our unalienable rights. For example, in the midst of extreme controversy over the Black Lives Matter movement, many supporters say that it ties directly to natural rights. For instance, out of the 966 reported police killings since May 25th, 2020, Black people make up 18.7% of that, despite only making up 13% of the United States population. John Locke's natural rights are life, liberty, and property, and by taking innocent people's lives away, the government is directly violating that.
According to John Locke, a state of nature is when no government laws exist, but 4 main components would prevent this from working. People driven by self-interest, people who can't protect their rights due to lack of strength or skill, people insecurity and fear for their rights due to lack of government, and the fact that the creation of a government is not legitimate unless everyone consents. Natural law is a protection of people's natural rights. Our natural law is the Constitution and Bill of Rights, which establishes and protects people's freedoms.
We agree with John Locke and Thomas Jefferson with the idea that in a state of nature, everyone has a duty to respect everyone else's natural rights. When natural law is not respected by others, it can create an environment of violence and division, as seen in the founding and rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Established in 1865, it quickly became the poster child for inequality for African Americans. They took to violence, going as far as to bombing Black schools and churches. The natural right to life that Black Americans had was taken away, and the South soon became a place of fear for African Americans.
John Locke believed the best way to solve the problem of finding a way to protect everyone's natural rights was to create and live under a government that has the power to make and enforce laws. He called this agreement a social contract. The United States Constitution is an example of America's social contract. People who choose to live in America agree to be governed by the obligations outlined in the Constitution.
In a social contract, citizens give the government power in exchange for the government to protect their rights. Still, sometimes people can feel like they aren't receiving the protection that they deserve, and it can cause issues such as situations similar to the Revolutionary War. People often think that citizens have to give up many of their rights to the government in a social contract. However, John Locke says that the only freedom people have to give up is the right to punish others for violating people's rights. Locke's reasoning for a social contract was to better the stability and comfort of people's lives, liberty, and property.
Although social contract has been proven necessary in a prosperous republic, it does place both positive and negative limitations on our government. As both Locke and Madison state, our government prospers under a sacrifice of rights from the citizens to ensure a successful balance of power. In more modern times, federal constitutional limits on state police powers are under debate, especially for current COVID protocol. These powers are called to respect individual and federal rights, but in the middle of a global pandemic, many believe these limited rights have overstepped, causing the powers to be questioned as unfair and unconstitutional.
Some obligations our Constitution places on our government are things like taxes, protection from invasion, and the required respect of state territories. In the court case Reynolds versus United States, George Reynolds was in a polygamous relationship, which was against federal law at the time. He argued that because it was part of his beliefs, the illegality of polygamy was against his freedom of religion. After being taken to the Supreme Court, the court ruled unanimously that a law banning polygamy was constitutional and did not infringe on citizens' First Amendment rights. When you are a citizen of the United States, you are called to sacrifice your independent rights to promote the country's common good, meaning that to gain the true protection of your natural rights, you sometimes have to give up your own delectations. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Okay. So you kind of touched on this a little bit. I'd like you to get into a bit more depth on it. If, as Locke asserts, the purpose of government is to secure the rights of the individual to life, liberty, and property, when should government be able to limit these rights?
Well, in my opinion, I believe that the government should be able to limit these rights when it is harming other people's natural rights, such as something like murder, where obviously there's a law against murder because murdering someone and taking their right to their life is wrong.
To add on to what my colleague said, I do believe that I agree that the government should limit people's natural rights to life, liberty, and property if they violate these rights towards other people, violate natural law. But I disagree with limiting the felon's rights to life, because I disagree with the death penalty, which I'm assuming that was referring to. And because as of February of 2021, there has been 2,551 exonerations listed in the National Registry. And that is a lot of people from death row who have been exonerated. And 185 prisoners on death row have also been exonerated who were supposed to die. So I think that if with such a high number, we should not have the death penalty at all.
Are there any state of natures anywhere now?
No, there aren't any like state of natures because most countries and governments have some sort of ruling or power, because in a state of nature, it is listed that there are no government laws. So you can really do anything that you would like. And most all countries have some form of a government.
What about a middle school lunchroom? No, I'm. How? So there's no. If I move to Idaho, and I live up in the mountains, I'm not in a state of nature. I've retreated from the contract, or not.
In a certain situation while you are maybe living technically isolated, you are not in a state of nature because you still are under Idaho's ruling and Idaho's state law, along with the United States federal government and national law. So although you may be like literally isolated, you're not isolated in the fact that you are above the rule of government.
So what if I stand on top of my Idaho hilltop and yell out at the top of my lungs, I renounce and do not recognize your government, and I am therefore explicitly not consenting to it? Can I do that and no longer be under their control?
You can say that you are no longer under their control, but as long as you live in that place, you are under constitutional and state law. So you can say it, but it doesn't really matter.
Yes, because in our American government, we have our First Amendment right, which is our freedom of speech. So we can say almost anything that we would like, but it doesn't always prove as true.
So if someone thinks that government, or if someone or groups of people think that government's not doing what it was designed to do, so they've reached this decision, government's not doing what it was designed to do, should people have the right to renounce it? What does that right look like?
Well, we do have the right to renounce it. It's also our First Amendment right. We can protest against it, as we've seen currently with all the protests against many things that people feel that is wrong. So we are allowed to protest against it and speak our minds, saying that it is wrong. And us as citizens in our government we have most to all the power. So we elect representatives that we entrust our power into, to put into our government. So if we feel that what they're doing is wrong, we can elect someone else to be put in office.
To add on to what my colleague is saying, we have obviously seen recently, since about last May, in the death of George Floyd and the Derek Chauvin trial, the amount of protests and maybe even some would call riots throughout our country, where people are speaking their mind about the Black Lives Matter movement. That is kind of some of the way that people can take action if they feel that the government is not handling certain areas of our natural rights correctly.
To add on to my colleagues, sometimes that you can protest against what the government is doing, but the government can be a little oppressive, a lot more than a little. And as seen in Russia right now, when Alexei Navalny put out a pro-democracy sort of organization, and he was thrown in prison as well as his lawyer. And he was originally on hunger strike, but now he is off it. And it is seen now that they are trying to put his organization in the same league as ISIS, which would mean anybody who's following it would be named as extremists and put in prison. So you can see that even if the people still feel like their rights are not being respected and the government is failing them, it's not always so easy to rebel against it in other countries.
I'd like to follow up on a word you used to Glippy's question. You used the word, well, we can always renounce. What's that look like? Because I mean, Alan said he stood up on his mountaintop and renounced. Are there other versions of renouncing the social contract?
Other ways of renouncing the social contract could be like not following the rules that are listed in the social contract. So like, for example, our social contract is the Constitution. So like not following the certain laws that are in place.
So if I refuse to pay my taxes, I'm not following the law. Am I renouncing my citizenship, or renouncing my acceptance of the government?
Yes, you are, because you're refusing to abide by the laws set in place by our government. And by that, you are renouncing it, saying that you do not consent to that government, or you do not choose to follow it.
But to add on to my colleague, if we are assuming that you are still in Idaho, you are still under American territory, so they still do have the right to prosecute you for tax evasion.
I'm going to throw something out. Right to revolution. What should people have this right? Right to revolution. And what does that look like?
Yes, people should have this right, because without it, America would still be under control of Great Britain, as seen in the Revolutionary War. Rebelled against Great Britain. And I think it should look a lot like the Revolutionary War, because it's not easy to rebel against a whole government, because they have more resources than you, they have more arms than you, they have more, men or people to fight against you. So it should look a lot like the Revolutionary War.
All right, thank you. we were at time. Thank you. I'm gonna, now's the time for feedback from the judges. So I'm gonna let Tim or Alan take the lead here.
Yeah, I guess I'll start out. This was you've said some pretty provocative things, tying in the Eighth Amendment to this notion of tying in the Eighth Amendment as a feature of to think about within a social contract. You did this in several ways. The disparity of arrest records within a social contract. So I think some of your use of information and evidence was quite interesting. We pushed you on this revolution and renunciation stuff quite a bit to see how far you wanted to go with that, and it's interesting to me that you're not quite sure about this revolution thing, and frankly, I'm glad you're cautious about that, because a total collapse, none of us in our lives have seen what that looks like, but I'm pretty sure we would recoil in horror if we truly did see a revolution. That's why it's a long train of abuses kind of criteria, according to Jefferson. So and I thought you handled that quite well on us pushing you on that. I would urge you to think a little more on renunciation. What does it look like? Can you partially renounce? Is it always a zero sum? You have to totally renounce? I would have liked to heard a little more nuance within that. But you're tying these to constitutional principles is quite good, because this is a hard question to do that with. So this has been fun. The last 2 days to meet you in this brief format has been great, and I wish you luck.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Tim has noted. This is an amazing, as a teacher, I look at this question and go, oh my God, they could have dropped at least 1 or 2 parts of this and we'd have been fine for our 4 minutes, and still had things to talk about. So at one level, I think the way you handled this was very good, in the sense that you have a lot to talk about here, and these concepts are not easy. Okay, they are difficult, and we did push you a bit on what I think is one of the more interesting areas, is this idea of right to revolution, or right to renounce, or right to alter or abolish. And I think one thing I would think about is, while there are no clear, and I would agree, it's hard to find American examples here. We might be able to find some international examples where some of these things have occurred beyond the American Revolution. So just as an area to think, I mean, we get so fixated in this on our system and our Constitution, that there are places, particularly in Unit 1 here, to think about other nations and how they address these. But on the whole, guys, I thought a very, very nice job. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And just close out a couple more comments. Really enjoyed hearing your evidence, particularly the current modern day examples that you all used in your opening statement and in the response. I think connecting this question, which is so philosophical and historical at the same time, but really bringing it to contemporary issues, I thought was really well done, and I enjoyed hearing those examples. I would encourage, maybe a little bit better distinction between what Locke said and maybe bringing out a little bit more about what Thomas Jefferson said. I think as you explore and kind of think about these issues as well. Again, on the whole, I've really enjoyed hearing you both today and yesterday, and wish you all luck as you move forward. So thank you again for all the work and effort you all have done in preparing for today and yesterday. So thank you.
Thank you.